The KZN Environmental Outlook Report is out, and it paints a gloomy picture of the province's environment. Poor air quality is just one of the issues facing the province. KZN Environmental Affairs MEC Sihle Zikalala says his department is devising a plan to deal with the situation. Desmond D'Sa from the South Durban Community Environmental Alliance joins us now. Good evening, Desmond. Thank you very much for joining us. Perhaps incredible is the fact that the authorities are not only aware of the problems, which by their own admission are getting worse and worse, but some of the tools or instruments that are meant to help are also not in a working or in good working conditions.
Good evening, Vuyo, and good evening to the listeners. The report is 14 years too late. You know, the initial report in 2004, a lot of work was put together by all stakeholders, including communities and all three tiers of government. And that resulted in the most sophisticated monitoring equipment ever brought to this country from Norway. That was placed around South Durban to get credible data that we could use to get to the bottom of the problem of high levels of chemical emissions that impacted on the health and well-being of the local population in South Durban that lived alongside the petrochemical and chemical industry. However, I must say that up until 2009, we could get the credible data, and as stakeholders, there was a plan devised on reducing the pollution. And that resulted in sulfur dioxide was reduced by 60 tons per day. So there was huge improvements on sulfur. But since then, in retrospective, we've gone backwards. And the data, since 2009, the data was not available. The South African air quality systems, where the data has to be logged, that showed that the data was corrupted at some of the monitoring stations. That was the beginning of what we began to see. The whole notion that the monitoring equipment were not maintained, but more important, not calibrated, and that data that even was there wasn't accurate and correct data for them to make firm decisions. So since then, we've had about over 50 fires and explosions at the engine, petrochemical, Shell and BP, KZN, IVS throughout the years, and the big one was last year that occurred within the Durban harbour, where 39 chemicals were emitted into the atmosphere and into people's lungs and homes. Now, Zikalala, his report, which shows that the air quality is very poor, but also what has happened since then, the green area where people had their safety had to go when these explosions and fires took place, called the Garden Course in South Durban. That was demolished, and decisions were made to turn it into a trucking depot, and place 2,000 trucks at that corner, and placing learners and educators that come from the townships and commute into the local schools, their lives at risk. The pollution already showed, the vehicle emissions already showed that had exceeded the cumulative effect, and that exceeded the air shed. However, the decision that was made by the Department of Environmental Affairs will increase even further. And yet they went ahead, you know, they went ahead and granted that decision, which we as communities, local communities, have had to take it to the High Court on review to ensure that this pollution is not going to increase and have a severe impact on people's lives in the South Durban area. Now, I must say, though, that the portfolio committee, the National Portfolio Committee came down last year in June. And when the fire occurred, they came down and instructed all tiers of government, National Air Quality Department, provincial and local, to work together and to reform a stakeholder committee to look at the problems confronting the people of South Durban. That hasn't happened.
Now,
you know,
Desmond, on the
air
back
quality
of that,
management plan.
Well, I mean, if that has not happened, if the legislature or representatives of the legislature were there and issued instructions and those instructions have not been followed, do you believe the provincial government, the MEC Sihle Zikalala and his director, Sabelo Ngobo, when they say, please relax, we are on top of this, we are busy devising plans to deal with this situation?
I don't think so, I must tell you, I must be honest, I don't think so that Zikalala will, and his director will do anything about the situation. Because what they should have done in the first place, they should have called a stakeholder forum with the local government, the national department and ourselves to sit around and devise the plan. You know, the last 3 years, the air quality management plan for the city of Durban is lying on some officials' desk. This air quality plan was devised together with all stakeholders, including myself. And we haven't heard a thing about it. So, you know, for him to come and say that he's going to devise another plan. What about the plan that was devised 3 years ago? What has happened to that plan? What has he done about it? Because that plan looked at the monitoring system, it looked at the whole air quality problems, it looked at climate change. What has happened to that plan? That's my question to the MEC. Why hasn't that plan, why hasn't he had a discussion with people that work together to form a plan of that nature, and nothing has happened on it in Durban?
Mr. D'Sa, you know, the Auditor General had for years been complaining about the fact that he issues reports on how public money should be managed, but complaining about the fact that there are no consequences for government officials and as well as public officials. Parliament has now given the Auditor General those powers to ensure that there are consequences for people who do not do their work. Do you think that's something that should be considered when it comes to environmental management? Because here, I mean, all people who spoke today, the MEC, the directors who were there, actually admitted that they know about the problem and the fact that the problem is getting worse and worse.
I certainly believe that we should take it to a further level and get, we have tried the Public Protector, I must say, and the Human Rights Commission to deal with these problems, because it's a violation of our human rights in South Durban, where people are dying. We are burying our mothers and children every week, and the cancer risk is increasing, and they're well aware about it. So I think we need to take it at another level to ensure that we get government to listen to us, because at the moment, they've done nothing about the problem. Instead, we've seen very bad development, the increase of poor development of the chemical and petrochemical industry that is going to exacerbate the problem of the people of South Durban. So certainly, from outside, we're looking at all avenues to challenge why they failed to address the issues when they know fully well that there's a huge problem of health and the quality of life of the people of South Durban.